Okay, well, I'm going to just jump right in. Last time we were discussing whatever the topic was, databases, which I thought was excellent. By the way, that went well. But anyway, we talked about those databases.
I think all our podcasts
Yeah,
are
they're all
excellent.
excellent. And then last week
Thank you very much for our 5 viewers out there. Excellent podcast.
last week you talked to Zane Rhodes. That was good.
Zane's awesome, by
He
the way.
really knows.
He's like what do you call him? A wizard? No. Is it a wizard?
He's certainly
Mad scientist.
Mad scientist.
He's like a process engineer, mad scientist.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. In the database world, we were talking about needing to dig into it, analyze it, take it apart, do crazy
He's
operations.
just gonna knock a few carbons off.
He does the same things you might do with a database to go do something innovative. He does that with the molecules, which is really cool because I don't know how to do that. and probably he doesn't want to have anything to do with a database either, to be honest with you. He'd rather deal with the molecules.
Yeah. He's gonna knock some carbons off.
Knock some carbons
make some
off.
Fuel.
It's awesome. So anyway, that was a good conversation. But we had previously started down the road of talking a little bit about some feedback from the Technical User Forum that was from the Octave conference in Austin. So I figure we can pick that back up. Let me give just a quick overview of that conference, though.
Yeah.
It was a 2-day, the first Octave. They're doing 5 of them, I guess. They did one in Austin, and they're going to do several in Europe and Asia.
One in Germany, Singapore, I think China, and Brazil. Is that right, Daniel? Yeah.
And so, which Hexagon had those conferences, but they were primarily bigger, and most of them were in Vegas. And so this was sort of the recreation of that in a regional capacity. So the one for the U.S. was in Austin at the Fairmont Hotel, which was
nice.
a nice place.
Yeah.
It was short, though. It was 1 day of Octave/user presentations, like stories from implementations and projects. And then it was 1 day of technical user forums, which were more heavily led by Octave this time than I think they have been in the past.
Yeah, generally in the past, those are led by the user forum chairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it was a good little conference. We did have quite a bit of feedback from a podcast perspective, right? We had several people. I had a couple of folks say, "Hey, we're actually at this conference because of you guys, because we heard it on your podcast," which I thought was cool.
That was pretty awesome. I was proud of that.
And I had another guy say, "Hey, man, I'm enjoying the content. I can't believe you're giving it away for free." I was like, "Oh yeah." So, but lots of good feedback from that. I think there is some basic interest in these topics, and people are happy to hear somebody talking about them. So that was good. And then during the user forum day, that's a day when there's updates. Hey, what's the future look like for the product? What are the change for the products, right? Because there's 10 different rooms with 10 different types of products that are being, let's say, just as an example, round numbers that are being discussed. But then there's also time for more open discussion and open forum. So in the one that was focused on the 3D modeling, P&ID, instrumentation, electrical, in that technical user forum, you and I were both a part of the facilitation of that, along with the Octave team, right? And there was a particular point in that conversation when I think the concept of handover came in and how the engineering companies and owners interact, and what's the right strategy to have from a workflow perspective. How do you make sure that the engineering teams are doing good work, but they're also facilitating or giving a good handover to the operator so that they can take this data and they can work with it. And you brought up a subject that we've talked about a little bit in the future, kind of to where the industry's headed.
You're talking about when I stepped into the
to say,
stepped right in it.
yeah, hey, I mean, really, ultimately, the owner operator is obviously the owner of the physical asset, but they're the owner of the data that supports that physical asset, all of the design. And so there's long since been this scenario of operating facilities, having smart tools, having them available in a cloud, and brownfield work being done in those tools. That's a concept that's not new to the industry. It has been implemented in some cases well, in some cases poorly or whatever, but that's more for smaller things. And kind of what you were bringing up, which is the topic of, hey, are we at that point where the data for the actual capital project is just owner hosted from the beginning? So this idea of the handover, we've had several series specifically on the challenge of the handover, but what if that handover kind of goes away because you invest the right resources up front to build that digital project and you just steward it in one spot for the entire project, and so it's an owner-operated, hosted, smart engineering environment?
Yeah.
And what do you think the reaction to that was?
I think that's when I stepped into it and it kind of blew up because you had multiple people in that forum at the time. You had owners and you had the EPCs and when I said that, I think I struck a nerve with that crowd, right? Because the EPCs don't necessarily like the idea, I guess, because they think it prohibits them from maybe using some of the utilities or functionalities or workflow processes that they might have. But then the owners like the idea because it limits the handover. I'm going to call it a catastrophe. The handover catastrophe normally follows these large projects, right? And what do they do after the project, and how do they get the data? Because after the projects, the owners want to utilize that data, and if they can't get it through the project or during the project, they basically have to recreate it after the project, and that's a large effort.
Yeah, or if they get it and they realize that the EPC did it really specifically to their way of doing something, or they had certain parts of it that they didn't want to give away to the owner, so they kind of take those out, and so it
makes it non-functional.
You get a data set that isn't really going to support operations very well.
Yeah, I think that's a large part of the problem. So I think that struck a nerve in the audience, and I mean we've done that. We've had those forums before, and we've done those kind of conversations in the past. But I think the big difference in my mind, and I'm going to give a shout out to Adam Williams, one of the leaders and the owner operators of this space, is that their voice is getting louder. So Adam actually spoke up and was like, "Hey, that is the direction we want to go for our organization."
Which means, as an owner-operator, I'm going to have a platform for 3D modeling, including my specs. And I'm going to have a platform for P&ID, including my symbols.
Correct.
And I'm going to have a platform for instrumentation, including my data sheets. And what I really want you to do is to just execute the work in that platform.
Correct.
And that sounds simple, Blake. But I will tell you the reason those EPCs get upset is because in the past, the early adopters of this philosophy, a lot of them did it poorly.
I would agree with that.
A lot of them said, hey, I'm going to set that up, but I'm just going to give it to my IT department, and they're going to run it.
You're talking about from the owner-operator side.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the engineering company was like, okay, I see what you're doing. I'll play this game. Let's give it a shot. And they get their user accounts. And the environment has been crappy. It's been It's been poorly performant. The support has been terrible. The configuration has been basic at best at times. And I mean, I think it's a little bit of PTSD for someone who's been on a project where their hands were tied and it was crappy. I'm not saying that can't be fixed. I'm just telling you, I think those arguments are legit.
I think those arguments are legit, and you know, we've been in the industry a long time, and I've been in the industry doing this and kind of supporting owner operators for a while. I will agree with you. It was crappy at the very beginning. I think it was for two reasons. One is the actual environment, and then the support, like you mentioned. What I will say though is technology has changed a lot. And so I don't think the environment problem, because before, if you say, hey, we're going to host in a cloud, you have latency problems, especially with like 3D models and stuff like that. You know, you had to use Citrix or whatever your terminal services was. So I think, you know, 10 years ago, that caused more problems than it does today, because I think the technology has changed so much that that functionality is actually not a problem anymore. Now the main problem is the support. I think the support is more of a problem than the actual environment.
And I want to follow up on something there, because you're right. Support is the problem. But the technology you're talking about is not necessarily the fact that the applications have changed, or they're easier to configure, or they're easier to use. There's a little bit of that, but most of that is just the fact that the network is better, the connectivity is better. So like, you know, we had scenarios where we were using remote machines, and you'd actually have them. You'd have a machine in a secondary office, and you'd remote into that machine to use an app, because there was a database on that network.
Yeah.
And so you're doing these weird little hops and these weird little games to mitigate the network problem, because you couldn't just work in an app that was remote computing. It didn't work very well 10, 15 years ago. Right. So I think a lot of the technology you're talking about, I think you agree with, is almost not even in our discipline, or it's just an underlying IT thing that has gotten better. The connectivity of the world is better.
You're right. So the applications themselves has gotten better, but what's really changed in the technology is that network infrastructure has changed, I would say, drastically over the last 10 years. So it's significantly different. Okay. And I would say that even now, in today's time, we talk about cloud environments and stuff like that, but in today's time, literally, I believe that 90% of the people are already in a cloud environment. It might be like an Azure cloud within your company, but
your servers are not down the hall.
But your servers aren't down the hall anymore. They're already in a cloud somewhere.
I will give you a comparison. To me, it's kind of like, I remember if you logged onto the internet in 2005, and you're on like
you dating yourself here.
You're on like Yahoo or something, and it wanted to show a video. You were like, "Oh, geez," because you knew it wasn't going to load, right? You're like, this damn thing is not going to. Yeah, you're seeing like 1 inch at a time. And now, today, that's the most of the social media platforms, the Instagrams and the Facebooks
like
and all
Netflix,
those guys.
Right?
Well, right there, but even. People would prefer to watch a 1 minute video rather than read a 1 minute article, because the technology just kind of got to a point where like, yeah, the videos are successful. But I mean, I literally remember thinking like, you know, I try to close anything that was trying to load a video. I don't want that crap, because you're in.
It would take too long.
It would take too long.
All grainy.
Yeah. So anyway, so the basics there, I agree. That basic fundamental network connectivity has made this a lot better. But then where that leaves you is, I think, two primary situations. And one of them is support, meaning truly, do you have someone supporting this system that is going to hear what you need and be able to respond in a timely fashion and help when you're trying to do a task? That's one element. The other is purely access, because a lot of these remote systems are super locked down. And so when you're in your company's system, you have more freedom of movement, copy and pasting files, opening two apps at the same time, copying between them, those sort of things. You have traditionally lost some of that. So I don't think it's all the help desk guy.
when you say all the help desk guy, I'm going to change that. The access to the information, I agree, is very important, right? So if you're going to go to like some kind of third-party cloud solution or an owner type cloud solution, and you're an EPC, well, you want that access to get into your workflows, right? Whatever data you need, get into your workflows, get into your utilities that you use to make yourself more efficient in the project. Would you say that that's a technology thing, or would you say that's a support thing? Because in my mind, the technology is there to allow that access, so it's more of a support security issue, not a technology issue anymore. It's how whoever is hosting that environment, whether it's an owner or whether it's a third party on an owner's behalf, they have to support the environment in a way that enables the EPCs and the project teams to be successful, in my mind.
Yeah, if you were ranking the challenges, I think in the past, the number one ranked challenge would have been the network connectivity.
Yeah.
I think that is now a footnote, not even maybe on the list. I think now the number one complaint would be control. And then number two would be the actual support.
Okay.
But the number one complaint is probably the restrictions that are implied within that cloud. You're going to have less things available to you, less ability to interact, across multiple tools, and you're going to have less custom stuff. So I think that control would be, if you polled the EPCs in the room and you said, well, why don't you think you're going to be successful if this is in an owner-hosted cloud? They'd probably say number one, control, and then number two, the help desk sucks. That'd be my order of operations.
I would agree with that. I would say
because the help desks have been traditionally poor from the owner-operator side.
I would say the level of access, I guess control is level of access to the data they need. Right,
data, apps, friendliness of the system.
So I would say that is number one, and then number two is support. I think what happens specifically with number one is that people use that as the scapegoat to say, oh, it's a security issue. I can't give you access because of some kind of security compliance or something like that.
I think people use cybersecurity as the scapegoat.
Yeah, that's what I
to say that we have to
limit the access.
It has to be this crazy lockdown.
My argument to that, and the reason I called it support a minute ago, is because I think that the technology and the infrastructure side has gotten to where you could pretty much give the EPCs or the vendor, the contractors, whatever access they need and still meet your SOC security compliances, still meet those security compliances because the technology is there. It's just how you set up and configure the system.
Yeah, if you have the right support team,
yes,
you can confidently enable somebody's success.
Yeah, and that
if you have a team that's sort of pretending because they don't really know this stuff and they just got assigned this, right? So you're some random IT group and now somebody says, hey, turns out we're going to host our 3D model and you have to administer it. And then that person kind of does it. What they do is they default to super control.
Correct.
Super lockdown because they don't know what they're doing. So my point is the EPCs in the room are complaining because they say we're not going to be successful if you force us to work in an owner cloud. And the owners are saying, but we need you to work in an owner cloud in order for us to be better stewards of our data for the long term. And what that means, though, is the owners have to be real with themselves and they have to say, we have to do better administering these things.
Yeah, and that's why I would say that I think it's more the support is the main issue, right? Because what you're saying, just like you just said, the owners have to realize, or whoever that host is going to have to realize that, hey, we have to do better supporting the effort that the EPCs or the vendors are trying to do. Right?
You mentioned Adam and said, hey, we're an owner, we're hosting our data, you need to work in it. But he has an obligation to provide good support. And if he doesn't, then he's basically bringing to life the exact complaints that the EPCs were having, where they're going to say, this is going to suck.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, and so
Yeah.
where the challenge comes in is everything eventually becomes a money question. So then you go to the owner and you say, okay, owner, your support team has to be better. You can't outsource IT to the cheapest bidder. You can't do this with people who halfway know these apps. You need to supply real qualified industry professionals, the engineering, the application administrators. And so you as an owner, if you see the value in your digital twin and you say, I need to own it from the beginning, then you're going to have to set aside money
to do
that you traditionally wouldn't see. Traditionally, that money would be in the EPC project, and they would bury it. And they would say, I'm executing this job, and I have administrators in my bus, that's my project team, and we pay for them, but you don't really see a different line item for that. It just kind of comes with the product, and then when we're done, we'll hand it over to you. And so if you pull that out, that cost now shows up at a different cost center. Some owner has to supply the team that's going to support this. And technically, the EPC should be slightly cheaper because they don't have to supply those experts. They should just be supplying engineers and designers. And then the question is, the EPC will say, yeah, but my engineers and designers are 2% less efficient because your support team is harder to deal with. So we're going to keep the same price. That's the problem. So the project wants to be the same price, even though they have less administrative. They don't have the administrative cost, and the owner has to now pay for an administrative team that can be relatively expensive. And so it's a little dance there, a cost dance.
I would agree with that.
And it's only going to work if the support is good enough. And the actual, because the volume is on the engineers and designers. That's where the big man hours are, right? All the people doing the modeling, all the people generating the deliverables. That's the big man hours. So if they are slightly less efficient, it is a challenge.
That's a problem.
So the owner has an obligation to fulfill this whole ecosystem to work, to supply servers, infrastructure, and support people that are enabling success. And I think we are 100% going to get there. And it's just a matter of how long is it going to take for people to understand how these little adjustments have to be made to get it there.
I think it's interesting, and I think I agree it'll take some time to get these adjustments, and it's growing because we have a number of clients and we're working with a number of owner operators that is their path forward is that they're going to host a system, right? And they're going to execute projects within their environment, and they're working with EPCs that are doing that.
And they're particularly looking for EPCs that are understanding that vision and saying, okay,
that are willing to be a part of it.
I'll work with you on this.
Knowing that, hey, this is, I wouldn't say it's new, but knowing that it's a change in workflows, right? And coming from the EPC world, I understand what you're saying. I don't like. I'm not a fan though when I get into those discussions of an EPC that says, hey, it's gonna cost more, because I've been in that discussion too, where they're like, well, if we have to work in your environment, it's gonna cost more because it's gonna be more difficult. If they say that right off the bat, I'm not a fan of that, because then I feel like they're not even trying to be a partner with the owner. They're just like, well, what's more difficult? No, like, hear the owner out, listen to what they have, ask your questions, right? Ask your questions about what type of support the owner's gonna have, what type of environment it's gonna be, and fill them out. But if the owner is actively like investing in that, investing in the infrastructure, investing in the support, well, then you can't just say, no, it's going to cost more.
They are hiring. So the owners are hiring the same people that work on EPC teams.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? I mean, we worked on EPC teams. Now we move over and help owners. A lot of our staff administrators were EPC administrators, and now they're administering for the owner. So the skill set is there. What's still tricky is the IT cybersecurity piece, because sometimes even as nice as you want to be, as accommodating as you want to be, there are more hoops to jump through because you've got this asset that you have to protect. I will bring up one other thing, because I've been using this left hand here, my left hand, as the EPC. Way back in the center of that EPC, some of them do have design strategies, old projects, innovations where they're trying to auto create portions of the project or they're trying to push and pull. That's a little bit of a sensitivity there, because if you have someone that's investing in their own internal sort of nucleus of their ideas, and they're saying, I use that when a project comes, I use that to launch that project to success. There's a little bit of truth in that, but I think we can work that out, because I think what we're finding is that generally the way I'd characterize this conversation is the engineering team does not realize how badly the actual assets suffer with a bad handover. Like it's unknown to the EPC just how terrible it is.
I feel like that is the case.
And a lot of people on the owner side, they started their career as an owner. They're not even sure that they don't fully understand the problem. But what you see people that have worked on both, and those people are like, what the heck is happening, right? I worked at EPCs. We did, and I'm using this like generically, this person is quoted like, I've seen what a great project looks like. And then I get access to what an owner facility looks like, and it's trash. We lost the model. The smart PNIDs got converted to AutoCAD. The SPI, the instrumentation's all out of whack.
Got dumped into PDFs.
Yeah, ridiculous crap. And so I think in general, the industry does not understand how bad that is on the actual owner-operator side.
I would agree with you.
In some cases.
I think it's turning around, and I think they're starting to see that. But yeah, I would agree with you. I don't think it's always visible, because you got one group of people that their job is to execute a project and then go to the next. You got another group of people that their job is to run a facility for 25, 30, 50 years, whatever the life cycle of that facility is. And so when these guys get done, they just kind of throw it over that fence, and then that causes problems on the operations side when they do that. Because I've been in, you mentioned that, I've been in those facilities where I know that the EPC did a bang up job on creating a digital project using engineering and design tools, right? And even today in 2026. You're like, hey, this project just ended. Hey, that's great. Let's go check this out and help this facility out. And you get in there and you're like, well, they did the project. I just had this happen. They did the project in Smart Plant Tools. And then you get over there and you're like, why are all the loop drawings in PDFs? Why are all my PNIDs in PDFs? Oh, well, that's what they delivered. You're like, what? Why did they do that? Right?
Yeah. Yeah, so when you brought it up at that tough, I would say the tone of the room was negative to the.
Oh yeah.
There was a lot of groans and moans. That'll never work. There's no way. All our projects are gonna fail. We lose our.
That's all right. We lost our light.
Okay.
Like, move your hand over there. Danielle's gonna turn it back on.
So I think it was. In general, the mood was kind of negative, right? Because it was one of those, that sounds crazy. We're not doing that. Because I think you had a room that was probably 60-40, 70-30 EPC maybe,
yeah.
Right? And ultimately, I think the conversation came to a reasonable point, which was most people are like, yeah, I know. We're probably going to get there. But I'm going to fight a little bit as we do. And I would say that like 20 years ago, this conversation was not happening at all for major capital projects. It was only happening in a brownfield space. But I think the momentum is definitely 100% moving toward the owner being in more control of the data. Just no doubt about it. Like if you argue that, you're just fighting with
I don't know
the
who
wind.
coined the phrase, but you have said it before that data is the new oil, right? For like these owners, and they're wanting to use that data to enhance their operations, enhance their productivity, right? Some of the owners are wanting to use it to get more out of their resources that they have on site, right? They want to give more ability to their resources, and I think the technology is there, and the owners are realizing, hey, we actually need
We
that.
need to own that.
We need to own that, and we need that information, and the owners are investing in the infrastructure to support it, and the owners are investing in the actual support, like the people, like the administrators, the application administrators, to support it. And I don't know if it was heard loudly, and it sounds kind of harsh, but there was an owner in that ELTA that said, "Hey guys, what we're looking for is an EPC that is willing to work with us in seeing that vision through. And if you're not willing to work with us, the next guy will be." So,
Yes, 100%. And the information that you've got there in terms of, everyone's trying to figure out, okay, well, how to make AI apply to my business? Well, you have to have reasonable data to work with. And so this data that we're talking about is the best source for all of those innovative concepts.
yeah.
And then you start talking about safety and you say, okay, well, I'd like to have less people on the site. Well, how do you do that? You have better information so that you only have to be on site for the things that are truly physical. You don't have to be there to research. You don't have to be there to compare. You don't have to be there to measure and figure it out if you have all those tools available digitally, right? And I mean, we were talking to somebody this week who's putting a facility in a remote area. Well, how are you going to find good qualified engineers to be a part of the staff for that if they have to be on site in that remote area? They rightfully want to be in a city near that. Okay, well, in order for me to have good engineers making good MOC packages, design packages, turnaround plans, all that sort of stuff, they need a set of information they can trust to where they have
good data,
to where they don't have to walk out and look at something to make a plan for it, right? And so you got to have good data. And so there's no, you're not going to go backwards from this. There's only going to be more need for improved quality there, which means engineering teams, they're going to have to learn how to participate in this in a constructive manner.
Yeah,
they are. And it's going to mean that some of the servers they used to hold and some of the databases they used to hold are no longer going to be there. They're going to be in the project cloud. And, we've called it the owner-operator cloud, but that doesn't really have to be the case. It's really the fact that the project itself, the digital project, is going to be neutral. And it's going to be to a point, because right now the ownership is still in the EPC, and then that creates delays on handover. It creates confusion. It creates problems. And so, in the very least, it needs to be neutral, to where nobody feels like they necessarily are controlling it. Everyone has equal access to get what they need to execute the project. And then the operations team is going to plug into that, and they'll run the plant, and it'll stay basically neutral, safe, secure, neutral, and easily accessible.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's where it's headed.
Okay. Well, good. Well, does that, we started that conversation, a couple weeks ago, but that was what you wanted to cover, right?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to cover. I think in some of the next episodes, we should get more on the technical side of that, like maybe what it looks like from a technical perspective, like from an actual infrastructure perspective, maybe what that looks like from an actual support perspective, maybe what you need to support that effort, right?
Yeah, and I don't want to be negative, but maybe we have somebody come on here and tell us about a project that was awful. Because you learn from that and you say, okay, well, that's
good.
That sucked super bad. It was really hard for everybody involved.
We should do that.
But moving forward, we understand the vision. So how can we replay
How can
that?
we make it better?
Right, because people want to avoid the negative subject. Oh, I don't want to talk about that. What about? Well, newsflash, there's
No, we
bad
should
stuff
just-
happening
we should
all the
just
time.
Jump right into.
We should let's get a
learn from our failures.
let's get a project horror story here. Tell me how that, and then let's shoot some holes in that thing and see if that could be that story could be fixed.
Yeah, I agree. Let's do that. That sounds like a good series.
Okay, project disasters. Okay, good. All right, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.